Welcome into a Thursday edition. It is orange and blue today, and Judge Smales, right, Mace? Did I get that right? We're waiting. We were waiting for this.
That is right, Judge Smales. Well, we're waiting. Seems like every year we're waiting on the Broncos to finalize their coaching staff. And Sean Payton is always like, hey, we'll announce it when we're ready. As LeBron James said in a long ago ESPN commercial, when it's ready. Or no, that wasn't LeBron, that was Dwayne Wade. LeBron was, the throne. I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah. Dwayne Wade was in the editing room. When it's ready. When it's ready. Well, it's ready. And there's some interesting news coming out of the titles. Not so much the who, but what the titles are. Starting with that guy that you saw pictured there in the slide to start the show, Davis Webb. Now he is the offensive pass game coordinator in addition to the quarterback's coach. And you can't help but think that this title, and we're going to get to a couple of other coaches with elevated titles as well.
Right.
This is all about throwing a little bone here, maybe a little salary increase because of interest from other teams in said coach.
Yes, and Davis Webb is where we'll begin with that new title, Mace, and working closely with Bo Nix. The success that Bo Nix has is something that Webb is clearly on his resume and clearly would have interest from other teams as that success continues. Davis Webb will be a head coach someday, and he'll have to move on. So they're holding on as tightly as they can right now to a guy like Webb.
Yeah, holding on tightly because this won't last forever. And if Bo Nix continues to do well, Davis Webb is probably not long for this staff because as long as Sean Payton is there, Sean Payton's going to call plays. And that's the thing. The Broncos can't offer offensive play calling to an assistant as long as Sean Payton is there, unless Sean Payton gives it up. And there's not really any indication that Sean's going to give that up. So this may well be a year-to-year thing with Davis Webb where we're talking year after year about, okay, is he going to stay or is he going to move on to a more prominent role, at least as a play-calling offensive coordinator, if not a head coach somewhere down the line. Certainly, I think the next step is obviously play-calling offensive coordinator. But, we've seen some coaches like Andy Reid a quarter century ago. He went straight from quarterback coach in Green Bay to the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and that worked out all right.
Yeah, we see some assistants do that. I believe Mike Tomlin, right? Did he go assistant or did he have a spot as a coordinator real quick?
I think he had 1 year as Minnesota defensive coordinator, I believe.
Yeah. So we've seen these stops. It happens quick and fast risers that you can identify as Tomlin was years ago and certainly as Davis Webb is right now. So enjoy him while he's here. May smoke him while you got him.
Yeah, it's a great find. I mean, I guess the thing that if you're Sean Payton, you're always on the lookout for coaching talent, and maybe you already start to be on the lookout for the next Davis Webb almost, because I can't see him staying here forever, unfortunately, for Bo Nix and the Broncos. I say unfortunately for Bo Nix because he's proven to be the right guy at the right time with that young quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see the success that Bo Nix has had, certainly a lot of it is to do with Bo Nix, and Sean Payton plays a role in that. But Davis Webb certainly, as the person involved with a lot of the day-to-day grind of what the quarterbacks are doing, somebody who just recently went through that himself as a player, he deserves a lot of credit as well. And certainly the interest in him coming from other teams in the coaching cycle is evidence of the fact that teams are noticing, and teams, and the fact that you saw Declan Doyle go from tight ends coach to Chicago Bears offensive coordinator, non-play calling OC. That was a step up for him as well. I mean, you see other teams noticing what's going on with the Broncos, and it's a good sign to have. Sean Payton will always say this is a good problem when your coaches are either being poached or you've got to come up with some title changes to keep them around and keep them happy.
Right. Keep them around, keep them happy, and then go win some flipping games. By the way, next Davis Webb is either Trevor Siemian or Brett Rippon. We can save that for a later conversation. For me, I go, all right, Davis Webb here. And the Sean Payton coaching tree, and maybe we should have started there, but we're talking about Webb. Like this coaching tree, we talk about the Shanahan coaching tree, certainly, but the Sean Payton coaching tree continues to grow and draw interest around the league.
Well, it sprung another branch with Aaron Glenn going to the New York Jets. I mean, that's really kind of a super strong branch because you've got Darren Muji, who worked with Sean Payton, going to the GM as well. I mean, so that really, you've got a Sean Payton protege there in Aaron Glenn, and then you've got someone who's really only known Denver in his professional career in Darren Muji, working for John Elway and George Payton. Of course, when he got up there at this press conference last week, in one fell swoop, spouting off cliches from both John Elway and George Payton, sounded a little bit like the melding of the two. Like if you had a professional love child of George Payton and John Elway in terms of how he answered questions at a press conference, it would have been Darren Muji that day. So
yeah, for sure.
But also, of course, Dan Campbell, that branch has gotten stronger. And now you have the branch of the branch. So like there's the Dan Campbell branch, and then the branch of that branch is Ben Johnson in Chicago, which of course then hires Declan Doyle, who comes from Sean Payton's staff, to join Ben Johnson in Detroit. And see how it all kind of comes together. I mean, this is a league of relationships. It's a league of connections. You know, as was once said on Beavis and Butthead about getting a job at Burger World. It's not what you know, it's who you know, huh? And then Beavis said, "Yeah, me and Butthead know each other."
Burger World. That's awesome. What else is awesome? A guy we warmed up to quickly, and I know you really warmed up to him, is Zach Strief.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, the praise for this offensive line, it cannot be, we cannot talk about it too much because we need to talk about it more because there's still people that think the offensive line is a problem. It's not. And it's the players, Mace, but that coach, Zach Strief, man alive, Broncos have a gem.
Well, you know, we can request assistant coaches to come out and talk with the media and do interviews during minicamp in June. And if any Broncos PR staffers are watching this, I'll just tell you, I'm going to request Zach Strief again because, first of all, he's incredibly intelligent. Second of all, he explains things in a way that comes across really well in terms of when I'm writing a story. He explains things that are going on in layman's terms. And it's not surprising because he's got a background as a broadcaster. He was doing radio for the New Orleans Saints when Sean Payton pulled him back to the coaching side. This is probably one of the reasons why he may make an outstanding head coach someday as well, is because of his communication skills that he honed on the broadcasting side of things too. But he's been a successful line coach the last couple of years. Quinn Minor's going to the next level on his watch. Certainly, Zach Strief has a lot to do with that. Lloyd Cushenberry continuing his rise and then getting that big contract in Tennessee. Zach Strief had a lot to do with that.
Yep.
Luke Wattenberg playing pretty well last year, being a part of one of, if not the best unit in run blocking and pass blocking last year. That, Zach Strief certainly had a lot to do with that. And I remember talking with Strief last year, and he said he expected more from Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey just because they were in their second year in the scheme. Kind of acknowledged that they had some rough spots in 2023 as they got used to it. And we certainly saw better. And certainly Mike McGlinchey was one of the best right tackles in football last year.
Oh yeah.
And he forecast that. He saw that coming. So give credit to Sean Payton for identifying some coaching talent in Zach Strief, identifying him down in New Orleans, encouraging him to come back to the football side of things, and giving him the offensive line coaching job. And when he came to Denver a couple of years ago, it was a step up. He'd been assistant O-line coach in Denver. He made a level jump. And while he's still the O-line coach, now he's got that assistant head coach title. Broncos, by the way, have 3 assistant head coaches. They had 1 last year. It was Mike Westhoff, and that's it. So Zach Strief has the assistant head coach title. Darren Rizzi on special teams has the assistant head coach title. And we'll get to Jim Leonard in a moment. He's got the assistant head coach title as well on the defensive side.
Yeah, and we had been waiting for a tight ends coach to be announced, and they did announce it today. Austin King, right?
Former assistant offensive line coach moving over to tight ends. That's a pretty common transition to go from O-line to tight ends and back again. So it's a step up for Austin King getting his own position group to work with after assisting Zach Strief the last couple of years.
Yeah. So Austin King will be in charge of whatever tight ends they pick up.
Might be a new one coming in next week to start that transition over there.
Well, might be Evan Ingram released today, right? As we record on Thursday. So, some interesting names out there, not just the ones we know in terms of Mike Gesicki, guys that are getting released like Evan Ingram.
What does Evan Ingram have left in the tank? Because this is going to be year 9 for him.
He's just got to be healthy. I feel like injuries, like when he was healthy with Jacksonville, he was still, decent and a pass catching weapon. You're not going to ask him to block. He was never that. But just think about that. Evan Ingram, OJ Howard and Jake Butt were in that same class. And George Kittle was there too. So there you go.
It was the 2017 class.
Woo.
Jake Butt, you mentioned that's who the Broncos got. And we all had high hopes for Jake Butt.
Yeah. I had high hopes for Evan Ingram and OJ Howard, and Howard kind of got in the, he can block. Wait, he can block. I feel bad for like Mercedes Lewis, Daniel Graham, I think was subject to this, where it's like, you're really great pass catcher and you get to the NFL and you're like, hey, you can block. So Austin King going to be in charge of likely a rookie tight end and perhaps Mace, a free agent tight end as well, with all eyes on that position.
This is probably a 2-pronged solution here. And that's why Ingram being on the market is interesting, because you say, as long as he's healthy, he was healthy in 2023 for a bad Jags team in 23 or mediocre Jags team in 23, 114 catches.
Yeah.
I mean, Joker, there you go. Because he's going to be in space. Like you're not going to have him in line very often. Mm-hmm. He's going to be running those routes in space. But of course, last year he missed 8 games. Now the thing is, like, there's this injury prone label on Evan Ingram that I think it goes back to early in his career, because remember, he didn't play a full 16-game season until his 4th year. Those first 3 years with the Giants, he missed a game in 2017, missed 5 games in 18, missed 8 games in 2019. He hasn't really shaken that reputation, I think, of being quote unquote injury prone, even though up until last year, he went through a 4-year stretch cease where he only missed 3 games.
Yeah. And guess who Denver has? Bo Lowry. So take guys a little bit injury bug, give him to Bo Lowry, maybe watch that bug get cleared up.
I would roll the dice on Evan Ingram.
For sure.
Honestly.
For sure.
Now, again, not the only solution. I'd draft somebody, but I would completely roll the dice on Evan Ingram.
Yep.
Even though, I mean, you look at the per catch average last year, it wasn't dynamic, but I think he got caught in the vortex that was the non-dynamic Jaguars offense.
It's a nice way of putting it.
by the way, the Jags also, this was the Jags cutting, I say Evan Ingram's a very good player. The Jags cut some Jags today. And what I mean by Jags is they cut some guys who are just a guys, but they're just a guys that you'll know if you're Broncos fans, because they cut Ronald Darby and Josh Reynolds, who, of course, the Broncos cut back in December, as Charlotte is over here off camera imitating. Like she was as she was mouthing me as I was doing that.
She's the next great Broncos analyst and reporter, Charlotte. So,
oh, gosh.
There you go. Do you want to wrap up the offensive side before we get to the defensive side here?
You want to go?
What, Chris Morgan and Evan Rothstein, right? Director of Game Management, OL assistant. And Morgan assistant offensive line.
Yeah, I mean that's you're talking about kind of the changes like on the, on the lower end of the staff, and basically if things keep going well, and you do have the staff get poached, these are guys that you look to move up at some point, and so those are the younger coaches, and you just kind of keep the line moving, keep the developmental train going. That's the thing. It's almost like a coaching staff, it's got levels. It's got levels to it. You always like to have a few young coaches who are developing on offense and defense, and actually that'll go the transition on the defensive side, because of course one name everybody's going to know is Todd Davis, who goes to defensive quality control. And I know that the Broncos very specifically wanted to have at least one of those quality control coaches be a relatively recent ex-player, because they had Chris Banjo in an assistant special teams role the last 2 years. And then of course he moves on to the Jets as special teams coordinator. So they wanted sort of that presence. Todd Davis was a training camp coaching intern last year, and he's got the dual connection because he played for Sean Payton in 2014 with the Saints. Then the Saints tried to sneak him through the practice squad on the waiver wire, but the Broncos had a need at linebacker because Nate Irving had just gotten injured. And so the Broncos plucked him off the waiver wire, kept Davis from going to the practice squad, and he ended up staying in Denver for the next 5.5 seasons.
Yeah. Good news for Todd Davis. Good news for, just like we talk about Davis Webb as a future head coach, Jim Leonhard, in my opinion, is 1,000% a future head coach who gets a title change today.
Here's the question: is it a future head coach in college or pro?
It could be either one. If I was him, I would search that NFL dollar, because he's the type of guy. I mean, if you want to forecast, I'm not going to say maybe a next Mike Tomlin, you know what I mean? But just a defensive mind that connects with players, makes things fun like Zach Strief. Guys enjoy him, completely revered by his players. Jim Leonhard is that guy.
Well, I mean, he's completely revered. Let's just, play the comment real quick from JL Skinner when we caught up with Skinner, several weeks ago, talking about Jim Leonhard. This is how most guys that are around Jim Leonhard feel about him.
I love Coach Leonhard. It's like it's a different type of coaching with him because he's done it himself at the highest level. So he's able to tell you things how he saw and explain it to you kind of a way what a player type of mindset would be. So it's a lot easier at times to understand him. And I just, I love Coach Leonhard because of how close he is with us, man. He's not really like a guy that's not been out of the game for so long. He just got done playing. So I love Coach Leonhard. I love everything about him, man. He's a big part of why the DB group grew for sure in all aspects.
By the way, you got the slide there at the end because I like did that for social media. Yeah,
I like that slide. It is orange and blue today, right here on your Denver Sports YouTube.
You're already watching it, though. People didn't need to see that. They're already watching the show.
Hey, make sure to share this show, right? Spread the love. We need the
like, comment, share, subscribe.
Yes, that's right. We'll do it all. And love us like JL Skinner loves Jim Leonhard, right?
It's a fair way of putting it.
Yeah, and now Jim Leonhard, defensive pass game coordinator.
That's what he was before. Like, he had that title last year. That's an interesting thing. Like, he was defensive backs coach, but he also was defensive pass game coordinator. So the big thing is assistant head coach for him.
That's a strong move for a guy that's going to be a head coach someday. I thought you were going to ask me, Mace, instead of college or pro, but like a future head coach for the Broncos.
It really depends on timing there.
Sean Payton wins one. Sean Payton wins one Super Bowl. He's the only coach that's won a Super Bowl with two different teams.
Yeah.
Jim Leonhard could be that next guy. He could be his successor. I don't think Leonhard sticks around that long. I honestly don't think it takes that long for the Broncos to win a Super Bowl with Sean Payton, George Payton, and Bo Nix. So timing is everything.
Like that, and like that's the whole thing that kind of comes into play is like the timing of it and how it works out. And I mentioned college as well. I mean, because of course he coached in the college ranks for 7 years, 6 full time, and then another in a consultant capacity in 2023. He could have been on the Broncos staff in 2023, but after he did not get the Wisconsin head coaching job and did not stay on the staff with Luke Fickell when he came in as head coach, he elected to have hip replacement surgery, kind of an old injury from his playing days, just go through the rehab, go through that in the offseason. Then he consulted on Brett Bielema's staff at Illinois for a year and then came to the NFL. Leonard, last summer when he talked with us, he referenced kind of some of the issues in college football that he doesn't miss. And I mean, you're talking about basically the transfer portal, right? Not, it's not NIL and players getting money that anybody has a problem with.
No,
it's the fact that your roster basically becomes your free agents every year, right?
Whereas, a constant state of tumult.
Yeah, you're basically having to kind of re-recruit every year. Whereas at least in the NFL, you draft somebody and ideally you basically say, okay, I can, if they play well, I've got this player for 4 years. You sign a player to a contract, okay, I've got them for 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years. You can actually plan a little bit better, and you can develop players better. And I think that's the reason why you see, say, for example, Chip Kelly coming back to the NFL, going from Ohio State to the Raiders staff, working under Pete Carroll. I think I'm curious to see, what sort of transition happens. Of course, we see Bill Belichick going to the college side as well. So it's not necessarily kind of a one-way thing, but it's definitely the transfer portal is something that, weighs on a lot of college coaches. And I suspect that Jim Leonard doesn't miss that. And that's why I suspect his future is probably in the NFL.
Yeah, I suspect it's in the NFL certainly as a head coach. Now, we know people were kind of waiting after the Michael Wilhoit legal situation at DIA. The Denver Broncos made a decision, Mace, and now they've got a new linebackers coach.
And it was really no surprise, like when you kind of saw the details of the report coming out, the allegations of punching a police officer there. I mean, there was nothing good coming out of that. So they fired Michael Wilhoit yesterday, and of course announced the full coaching staff changes today. So it kind of is what it is. I mean, the thing with Wilhoit, I mean, it's a little bit of a blow for the Broncos coaching staff to lose him, because you had guys that developed on his watch. Mm-hmm. Nick Bonito became a 13.5 sack player. Jonathan Cooper earned a contract extension. DeAndre Tillman went from the UFL to a very efficient contributor this past year. I mean, there were success stories on Michael Wilhoit's watch there with outside linebackers. So it's a loss, but the Broncos did their investigation into the incident and elected to move on. So there you go.
Yeah, they made the decision what they thought was best for the team. The also unfortunate thing, Mace, is he was set to take over inside linebackers, which this offseason, how much have we talked about inside linebackers?
A lot.
Yeah. So you pick one up in free agency, and you thought maybe Wilhoit would be coaching him. Now you've got Isaac Shoemaker, right, in as the linebackers coach for the Denver Broncos. So change there. Still, of course, got Joe Vitt kicking around as a senior defensive assistant, 44 years. I love that, because you see the coaching experience in the column. Mm-hmm. And, Joe Lombardi with 30 years and Sean Payton with 36. And the guy sitting at the top, 44 years. Good old Joe Vitt, man.
Yeah, and you have Shoemaker and you have Addison Lynch went from defensive quality control to coaching the cornerbacks. So you have 2 coaches who moved up. That's the sort of or 3 coaches who moved up, because you have Austin King as well. That's the sort of, so moving up to position coaches. That's the sort of thing that you want. Is you want the promotions. You want guys going up a level. You want to just like you want to develop players, you want to develop coaches. You want to be in an environment that develops coaches.
And when that happens, you're going to lose coaches. So, it's just kind of the cost of doing business.
So you got to be on the lookout for who's next. Always have to be on the lookout for who's next.
Yep. They got an eye for it. They got an eye for it for sure. All right, Mace, that wraps up our Thursday show as we're anxiously awaiting the tampering period. I'm not going to call it legal tampering.
Legal tampering.
Legal. People say I don't get along with people. People say I don't have personal hygiene. Like
I don't bathe regularly.
I watched a Chris Farley documentary.
I'm not the norm. I'm not personable. I don't let my scabs heal.
Did you know, and perhaps you did, Mace, but did you know, I just learned this on a Chris Farley documentary. The lady at the pool, that was skinny dipping and Tommy Boy, that he was like, don't give her where's you know where the gym's at?
Yeah.
David Spade had a crush on her because of course he did. But Chris Farley ended up dating her and kept it secret from David because he didn't want to hurt his best friend's feelings.
Aw.
Then David found out anyway. So
well, you can't keep a secret like that for long.
All right, you get Tommy Boy trivia and impressions. I don't know if we've coded Star Wars yet today, but you get all sorts of stuff.
There's always tomorrow.
Yes, there's always tomorrow. We watch it with great interest. That's what we hope.
There you go. You got it in.
I know. Always got to. He just coded Star Wars. See, now that's our inside joke about Rico Lay.
Power's back.
The little droid did it. Mace has got a Broncos helmet by him. So anyway, speaking of the obvious, what's obvious on how people can help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss a
vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lamey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Stay frosty.